Okay. Back, everybody. So you guys voted on a top charging or side charging Mac. And well, here's what won the top charging. VMAC, whatever you want to call it, upper. And well, what is this design around it, huh? It's all 3D printed. What is it? This is a redesign by Unseen Killer from what I believe to be the DB9, okay? Now, Unseen Killer, he likes to spice everything up and all, from what I can tell. And he calls it the Live, Laugh, Love. It's looks cool as hell, of course, as you guys can see. And this guy actually produces some cool-ass designs, okay? This little Glock frame right here was one of my first. I made some mistakes and tried to clean it up. I'm gonna reprint this thing one day, but nonetheless, his designs are awesome. So it goes by the name of Unseen Killer if you guys are interested in some of his designs. In fact, this design here, I believe after I started printing it, he came out with a stocked version or either a braced version. So those are options now too. But let's go ahead and talk about this thing because yeah, without the stock, you'd think it'd be uncomfortable. It's not too bad. It is a little heavy. One, it is a VMAC upper here, which is a square tube upper, like the Mac 90 kind of, chambered in 9mm. It uses an AR-15 fire control group and a Glock magazine, okay? Glock mag release, all that, the spring and everything in it. But the magazine itself is 3D printed, and you just need a Glock magazine spring, 3D print the rest of the parts, and there you go. And it slides in. The 3D printed magazine I was actually worried about for a little while, but turns out they hold up pretty well. So not even going to argue there. Our safety, again, AR style trigger, hammer, all that. And then it uses a little bit of hardware to put it together. Now, we did start seeing a crack. I'm going to tell you guys about that, but it's non-threatening to the gun in any way. But it's not because of the design. It's because I used the wrong screws right here. Okay, I was in a time crunch trying to find everything locally, and I couldn't. So I substituted the exact screws that are supposed to be in this thing. So this crack is completely my fault and not the design. Just a heads up on that if you guys end up seeing it. That is not the fault of the gun. Now the rest of the build, of course, again, over here, I used a drill bit because, again, time crunch and couldn't find the material I needed. Nonetheless, this thing has been fun as hell. We've got probably a good 500 rounds through it with a single malfunction. And that single malfunction probably was the fault of the magazine. It was a failure to feed. And in all honesty, I've had factory magazines that do worse than that. So I'm happy with this being a 3D printed magazine. Now, if we talk about it for a second, it's got a couple scratches on it, okay? These happened right away, and that's where the bolt's rubbing on it. No big deal, because they pretty much stopped right after forming, right there. So they haven't gotten any worse, and just for reference, I did sand this down, make it a little bit easier of a fit. Still makes a little sound. You guys can hear that, but all works out pretty well. This baby, I mean, it just works. Not too bad at all. The sights, in one of my videos, you're going to hear me say that the sights are shitty. And I probably shouldn't have said that, okay? Understand before I go any further. This gun is not meant to be some go-to-war gun or anything like that. It's meant to look cool and function, okay? Now, I was looking at the sights. Again, shouldn't have said shitty. You know, yeah, they leave a little bit to be desired for some of the better sights out there. But in all honesty, they work. And they worked pretty well. This thing was actually pretty darn accurate. Yep. Got our first failure. Think about it, it's accurate as hell. Even with these
pretty.
shitty sights. At one point of firing this gun, I just threw a bunch of bottles out. Now, not far. Half of them were empty, so they didn't go very far. But I took the gun, placed the sights up on target of the bottles, and fired one at a time, hit every one of them. In fact, I kept hitting them, even when they'd bounce and go off further, until I couldn't see them anymore. They all landed in the grass somewhere and were covered up. Had to go find them afterwards. So this thing absolutely hit every target without a problem with these sights. Don't really know why, but it worked. So I called them shitty, but they work. So I guess they're really not that shitty. Nonetheless, this thing has been absolutely fun. The one major downside is, if you notice this muzzle device, it's loose now. It wasn't loose to begin with. And in reality, I'm going to tighten it back up on here. You guys can see, it's actually drooping down. Now, that's from it heating up and us firing it and basically the barrel getting hot. Again, it's made out of PLA, so you kind of expect to have certain wear patterns, especially on a muzzle device where the gun's going to get hot as can be. So, I'm not really going to fault the gun over that. You can absolutely take this thing off and fire it without that. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, if you see this hole right here, I'm pretty sure he had it designed to kind of help hold it and secure it. That I never messed with myself, so yeah, that's on me. That's not on him. In fact, it looks like probably a 1/4-inch bolt went through it or something to hold it. And I'll explain why I didn't do that and why I might have missed that step a little bit later. But nonetheless, yep, you can use this thing all day like this. All right, I'm ready. Load her up. You guys, let's go over to our scorecard real quick and let's talk about it. Okay, this is our new and improved scorecard with 10 spots. Again, we're not going to come up with a total, but if you see, I've got my numbers on the sides here, and we're just going to go down the list. These are ideas as I was thinking what they should be and everything. So we're just going to go through it. Printability. Again, it's a little bit harder than a Glock frame, okay? Not by much, though. You still got supports, and you got a lot of other pieces, and most of the other pieces actually print pretty darn easy, like the grip, the release, all that. It prints pretty easily, so I'm only going to subtract one more point from that, so we're going to give it a 7. And all these are possible out of 10, of course. Assembly is pretty easy. I missed a step, and I'm going to explain that again in a minute, but for the most part, you can figure it out even without instructions, so we're going to go ahead with a 9 here. Parts availability. Parts availability, we're going to go with 9, just for one reason. I only know of one company that really makes these VMAC uppers. So everything else is AR-15 and regular bolts and Glock parts. All easy to find. The VMACs, they're actually pretty easy to find too, but because I only know of one company that makes them, I'm going to give it a 9. Okay? Instructions. Here's where, so Unseen Killer does not like writing readmes. And readmes are usually the instructions for 3D printed guns. He doesn't like writing them. He doesn't like writing them. So he didn't really include one with this. At least when I downloaded and everything. So, and that's probably why I missed this step right here. No big deal. But in fact, I'm not even going with the 5. I'm going to go with the 4 on that. Left a complete material list, all the hardware you need, everything like that. He just didn't exactly leave instructions for assembling it. Now, this is pretty easy to assemble, so not a big deal there. But I'm going with a 4 on that. Okay, now functionality. In fact, for what it's designed for, having fun, looking cool, it absolutely functions. The one downside I'm going to give it is the fact that this gets hot over time and starts to droop. No big deal. Again, it's fine. You can shoot it without it, but we're going to go with a 9 for that reason. Reliability. Honestly, look, we had one failure out of 500 with the magazine. And I'm saying the magazine, I don't know for sure. It could have been the ammo. Could have been the cartridge. The cartridge was a little off somewhere. So reliability, we're going with 10. It's perfectly reliable as far as I'm concerned. One malfunction in 500 is not a reason for me to subtract a point. Durability. Pretty darn durable. Pretty much everything. Now, you're not going to be throwing this thing around, but everything holds up with the firing of it. So, the only thing is, again, this muzzle device. And this muzzle device is kind of the reason I'm subtracting a few points from it. Again, you can absolutely use the gun without it, okay? It's just, this looks cool on it. And again, there's a good chance I was supposed to have a screw in here. So, we're going to go with 9. Okay, one of our new points we've added is depth. And that is how much of this thing is 3D printed. And well, in reality, this actually has more 3D printed parts than just the Glock frame. Okay, you have your metal upper with the barrel and bolt. But in reality, this has a magazine, a muzzle device, a grip, pretty much everything. So, we're going to give it an 8. Okay, that's probably along the lines of what we'd give a Glock frame for the most part. Yeah, we're going to go ahead with an 8 on that. It's mostly 3D printed. You need a few metal parts, and you're ready to go with it. Cost. Cost is going to be a little bit more than a Glock. Okay? Honestly, probably closer to twice as much as a Glock if I had to figure in everything. So we're going to go ahead and say a 7 on that. Again, there's definitely a lot more expensive builds out there. There's more cheaper builds. Functionality and everything around cost, you know, we're going to give it a 7. And, well, if you look, this would of course be a 10 because it's cheap as can be. I would say a Glock frame is probably 9, maybe 8. So, yeah, this fits around the 7 mark. Our last point is materials. What materials do you need to print this? And honestly, this is where I'm going to say this thing should get a 10. Okay? Reason being, okay, if you can print this out of PLA+, it's better for everyone else versus if you have to print it out of carbon fiber nylon. And, well, this thing, if we move this to the side, is completely PLA, okay? There's a good chance the receiver or even this top piece isn't even PLA+, it's PLA, regular PLA. Now, regular PLA is not good for 2A 3D designs, but there's a good chance I mixed up a spool while printing this. So, we're going to say, as far as materials go, it's a 10. You can print this out of the easiest materials to work with. Again, you have to deal with supports and all, but that's a different point. What materials? Yes, we're going with PLA. We're good to go. A 10 on that. So, if you look back over our list, this thing, I mean, for the most part, it's in the 9s and 10s. It's not a hard print. Again, it's a little bit more advanced than I'd say a Glock, but it's still pretty easy to print for anyone that's interested. And it has been absolutely fun. And again, if you're worried about holding this thing out with no shoulder support, yeah, he fixed that just a week or so after the fact, after I started printing this one. So his newer designs have a stabilizer. So there you go, guys. Definitely awesome gun to print. Thanks for watching.